Dr. Brooks,
I said,
hey, I'm so happy that you're here, man. Like,
I'm
you
delighted.
have no idea how much your material and content and books have really helped me understand who I am. I think your work is so fascinating because it's something that I've always understood, that happiness is something that we have to, I would say, earn and achieve and really understand. And I think it's something that we all need to hear because, you know, the way that I grew up was happiness was something that wasn't ever taught, for one, because I guess we didn't really know that it needed to be taught. And I would say to a certain degree, it wasn't really expressed because everything was based on having to get to the next thing to be okay.
Yeah.
And being okay was good enough. You know, I really go by, I always tell my wife, and this is a point of contention for us, was I have what I need, but not what I want, and that's fine. And I think when you're trying to navigate kids and you're trying to navigate marriage, trying to find out what that definition of happiness is really, really complex and difficult. What's interesting about you, as I dove into all your things, podcasts and books, is I found out from you that you said you're a unnaturally unhappy person.
Yeah.
And when I heard that, my respect level went like through the roof because I really understand what that's like to go against what you naturally are, right? And then battle with that, figure it out, and then being able to articulate it, put it in a package, study it. Like, I'm not studying anything that I do, but study it and then help people. And I think that's just the dream when you can, you know, get in the foxhole with something, figure it out, and being able to teach it.
It's a way of seeing your life. You know, I teach at a business school and they're always talking about doing a startup, being an entrepreneur. I mean, you're an entrepreneur in your business and I have a business and that's how people think of entrepreneurship, but that's not the right way to think of entrepreneurship. Real enterprise is your life. Your life is a startup. You're the entrepreneur. You're the founding CEO of Cedric Incorporated. Yeah. That's what it comes down to. And to be a good entrepreneur, you have to be willing and able to take prudent risk. I mean, committing crimes or, you know, risking all in Vegas, that's not prudent. That's dumb risk, right? But there's smart risks. Doing something that really matters a lot, like getting married, that's a smart risk. Having kids, super smart risk, but it's risky, right? Because there's a lot at stake. But here's the point. You have to risk prudently in search of explosive fortune, rewards. Now, in your business, in my business, that's easy to count. It's called dollars. But in your life, you have to figure out what you're trying to count too, the denomination of your returns. How are you trying to make a fortune? The answer is love and happiness. And if you don't know what love and happiness are, you're not going to be able to accumulate your fortune. You're not going to be able to be an effective life entrepreneur. That's why I talk about what I do. That's why I do my work. I'm literally doing my work for you because I want people all over the world who aren't naturally happy or who, like you, come from pretty adverse circumstances to say, I can do that. I can build my life, but I have to know what I'm accumulating. And if I don't know what happiness actually is, if I don't know what love actually is, I'm not going to be able to go in the right direction.
So would you say that fortune is a currency of fortune is happiness?
Happiness and love.
Happiness and love. And are you saying from the entrepreneur's perspective that showcasing happiness and love and digging in and figuring out how to attain that, you will attach that to something that you can eventually share or make something of?
Just as you would in a business. I mean, you're trying to build something that's beautiful and good, generative, that represents your hard work and personal responsibility. That's what your business is trying to do. But your life is supposed to be a repository of this love and happiness that you can share with other people as well. You want to radiate that. But you have to know what it is and how to accumulate it for sure. Now, there's other problems. I mean, one of the things you talk about in your childhood, for example, there's a reason that in communities that are impoverished, really marginalized, that there's not that much discussion of happiness. And the reason is because there's more of a barrier of unhappiness. Happiness and unhappiness are not the same thing. They're not even opposites. They're actually produced in different parts of the brain. So positive emotion and negative emotion, they both come from a part of the brain called the limbic system, but different structures of the limbic system produce positive and negative emotions. When you're actually up against not being able to make the rent or security concerns or not meeting caloric needs, which is so common all over the world, then you're really producing a lot more stress hormones. You're producing a lot more negative emotions. And then the challenge isn't how do I get happier? The challenge is how do I get less unhappy? And then the tendency is to be, I'm going to be a lot less unhappy when something in the world changes. That's a big problem,
Yeah.
right? Because you never learn how to work on yourself. You never learn how to get started on the enterprise, on Cedric Incorporated under those circumstances. Now, clearly, a bunch of things happened right in your life that made it possible for you to see that the enterprise, this explosive entrepreneurial venture was possible, and you're making it real. Not just football. Football was just the beginning. That was just the beginning of your journey. That just helped you understand how explosive the possibilities were. But now what you talk about literally is the currency of the fortune of an entrepreneurial life, which is love and happiness. That's your stock and trade.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I think a core message for my podcast is really diving deep into where the root of who we are, and then unpacking that and being able to find out what we're made of. And I think a lot of it is to truly find out what happiness is. So I have this, theory that I want to run by you that I came up with a long time ago. Well, it's more of a concept that I've always believed that we have to play the cards that we've been dealt. I think we've all been dealt a certain amount of cards, and I'm going to read off what I wrote down that I always come back to. I said, when we are born, we're each dealt a hand of 5 cards, setting the stage for the journey ahead. These 5 cards are family and early influences, environment and community, socioeconomic status, personal traits and talents, and health and well-being. Now, some hands seem naturally stronger than others, and some people, you would say, probably have better advantages than the other people, all depending on how you view these cards. So I'll let us start there. When you hear that idea that we're all dealt a hand at birth and that some hands make it easier to reach happiness, what comes up for you when you hear that?
I think that's right. I mean, the truth of the matter is we have a set of circumstances that we're born with. We just are. And the real question is, what are you going to do with the hand you're dealt? 100%. That's what it comes down to. I mean, you can't just say, look, man, I'm just hoping that I can get some new cards. That's how many people live, by the way. I can't,
not knowing that they live that way too.
I can't be happy until, we're recording this on the day the stock market is cratering. And if I were one day away from retiring, I'd be like, well, I guess I can't retire until the stock market gets better. Well, people live that way. I'm not going to be able to be happy until my marriage somehow improves, until my health somehow gets better, until I get a better job. But that's no way to live. The truth of the matter is you should work on what's under your control, which is how you're going to play the cards that you're actually dealt, as opposed to waiting around for your cards to change. That's a big problem, because that's probably not going to happen. I wish I could go change everybody's cards. I would love that if I could, but the government can't do it. It's not magically going to happen. You're just going to have to take things, put things under your own control as much as you possibly can. And that means looking at each one of these cards, by the way, and focusing on the ones that you don't think are that great. Like if your socioeconomic circumstances are really suboptimal, be paying attention to how you can improve that. If you're thinking about the influences on you, the influences on your life, take a good hard look and be honest with yourself. That's not a great influence. I need to go get some new influences. I need to go look for people who are going to mentor me and be honest and God-fearing and have good morals. And I want to be around those particular people. And when you start changing your own cards, one after the other, then your life really starts to change. You're a case study in that, aren't you?
I am. One thing that's coming across my mind is, when do you think people can notice this? Because I'm thinking of myself as like the 16-year-old said, who's in high school. I know that, I live in Bombay Beach with my dad. There's not much going on. But for me, I didn't really pay attention. I had football to really dial me in, to work out hard. And my life has been built on, you work hard, things come from that. I don't know where I'm going, but if I work hard, I'm gonna get somewhere. At least that's the hope. So I'm wondering, for you, is there anything in the science or in the studies that showcases the age where you can start recognizing, hey, this is what's actually going on. These are my cards, and I need to do something about it.
Yeah, people actually start finding that at different points. What you find is that there's a lot of neuroscience about when people start becoming more a product of their prefrontal cortex. That's the part of your brain right behind your forehead. That's the executive center of your brain, where you start to notice things and make conscious decisions. When people are very young, children, for example, they're more limbic, this emotional console inside your brain that makes you do things on the basis of how you feel. That's why little kids scream when they're unhappy. They cry when they're sad. And some people, they're more limbic than others, partly because they don't learn a whole lot of executive control over their lives. They're not taught that in schools. They don't witness that in their parents. If you have parents that are taking responsibility for their own lives, They have problems, but they're taking responsibility for their own problems. You witness that and you go, see, here's the thing. People ask me all the time, what should I tell my kids? It doesn't matter. All that matters is what they see. Literally all that matters is what they see. So a lot of guys will ask me, for example, what do I tell my kids so they'll grow up and go to church? You know, a lot of the people I work with, for example, are Christian people and religious people and of different religions, but they want their kids to grow up in the faith. What should I tell them? I say, it does not matter what you tell them. All that matters is what they see. So if you as a father, you want your children to grow up and be religious, to be a Christian like you, they need to see you in prayer on your knees as the most powerful person they've ever seen, because what do they witness? And this gets back to the answer to your question. They will see, the most powerful. I mean, when I was a little kid, I thought my dad was so strong he could lift the corner of the house. He was a math professor. He couldn't. So he was not an NFL player. So but you know, and he was proud. He would not have bowed the knee to any man, but he was on his knees on Sunday, man. And that had this huge impact on me as a little dude, because that's what it meant to be a man. That's what it meant to actually look at the outside world and see it in such a way that you could make a decision on the basis of the way that life appears to work for you, in a way that life can actually be better for you. That's why it's so critically important to find these influences. And this is back to the answer to your question. What's the age? That's the age in which you're actually understanding what you're seeing. I'm seeing somebody doing something and it's leading to something good. I'm going to go do that too. That's the important thing. That's why it's so critically important when boys in particular are adolescents, that they have good examples.
It's so funny you say that. I like went back to the little boy for a moment. And I've shared this story before, that I remember when I first started playing football at Jesse Owens Park in LA, I was really bad my first year. And I was like, yo, I don't want to be bad anymore. And all I did was look at the players who were good and just mimic what they did. They were the first around the park when we did laps. They were first in line. They had single digit numbers. And they had a certain type of gear, right? So I'm like getting ready to put on the costume for one, which is like the visor, the cleats, and like how they aesthetically look, but also put the work in to be the first around the park, to be the first in line and do all these things. And over time, you know, 15 years later, I get drafted into the NFL. So I think it's really easy to see that.
Got drafted to the Dolphins. I mean, it's not that simple.
No, exactly. But what I'm saying is like that frame of work, like if you see somebody do something good, mimic them, things pay off. That's how my life ended up for me. It's like I just understood who to look at and who not to look at, because I grew up in LA, like drugs, you know, gangs, you know, pimping, prostitution. It was all right there in my face. I'm in the heart of it. But just the simple realization of like just following the right people, even at my age group, really, really changed my life. And this is where I get back to the thing about like, how do you think our early perception of happiness is shaped by the people who raised us, our environment, and the resources we had or didn't have, right? Like,
so this is hard. This is a hard question. This is a hard question. So to go backward 30 seconds in the conversation, you're saying something really, really important. You want to be excellent, copy excellence. Go look for excellence and copy excellence.
Is that easy to understand though?
It's pretty easy for most people when they understand, because it's a simple formula. Go look for excellence and copy it. Now that just doesn't mean excellence in earning money. That means excellence in the kind of job that you do and the relationships that you have, and to be impeccable in your morals. Be excellent morally. That's just as important as being excellent professionally. So just go look for excellence around you, and you can find it. Even if you're in a community that's quite marginalized, you will find people who are excellent in different areas of life. And you say, I want to be excellent. What's your goal? To be excellent. Now, to be excellent means doing things that are excellent. It doesn't mean arriving at a particular goal. It doesn't mean that suddenly everything is going to be fine. There's going to be heaven on earth. I mean, you probably, when you were a kid, you would have said, it's heaven on earth today. I get drafted by the NFL. I'm going to get NFL team, heaven on earth. That was the beginning of your journey. And you don't know that. And that's a whole different set of fallacies that people get into. It's called the arrival fallacy. Everything will be good when. And it's not true. What's really great is making progress toward a goal, because you're mimicking excellence. Okay, now the second thing you ask is a really interesting thing. How important is the examples of happiness that you see around you? And the answer is, it's a mix. So half of your baseline happiness is genetic. not
Really?
environmental. Yeah. And we know that from identical twins that were separated at birth and adopted into separate families. So they're DNA carbon copies, but they're raised in different environments. And so you can use basic statistical methods to figure out what part of their personality is genetic and what part is environmental, nature versus nurture. And it turns out that their basic mood level, which tends toward, depression or anxiety or happiness, that it's half genetic. So your mother really did make you unhappy, but as people always say, right? But that actually is not a problem, because if you know genetic tendencies, you can tailor your habits. And habits are the other part, right? Circumstances and habits are the other half. And that's a lot, man. That's really, really a lot.
It is.
So then when it comes to habits, then the question for happiness is, where do you learn the happiness habits? And there's 4 happiness habits: faith, family, friends, and work. Those are those, and you talk about this stuff a lot. Faith, family, friends, and work. Those are the happiness habits. Now, when I say faith, I don't mean you're my faith, you and I are Christian men, but there's lots and lots of, when I say faith, I mean transcendence above the boring, terrifying details of your life and zooming out to something bigger. Family life is really clear. This is what you're talking about all day long, being a husband and father. Friendship, real friendship, people who love you just for being you. And work, meaning really only 2 things: earning your success through hard work and serving other people. That's what work is all about. Those are the happiness habits. And where do you learn those? From the people you observe. And so you get a leg up if mom and dad are doing those things right, even if they're naturally depressed people. That was my case. I come from very, very gloomy stock. I come from parents who've really, really struggled a lot with unhappiness and had low levels of happiness. So high unhappiness, low happiness. And that's a nasty combination.
And that's where your unnatural.
That's where it comes from.
That's where it comes from. Okay.
But they had a lot of good habits. They did a lot of things right. They raised me in a Christian home, and they were serious about it. They had a really happy marriage, and they loved me. My parents loved me, which is really good. I mean, this gave me a ton of advantages that not everybody has. Yeah. And I saw my parents. My parents had friends. My parents had friends, and I actually witnessed that. Now that's hard, because I'm on the road all the time, and et cetera, et cetera. But I know what it actually means. And my mother in particular was serious about her work. She was an artist, and she was passionate about it, and she loved it, and she completely dug in. And I saw that. So the result is, I got bad genes, but I learned good habits. And I learned those by observing people who are around me. And my older brother too, whom I admire very much, and a lot of other people in my life. That's why examples matter. And I dare say, you can't control your genes. Yeah. That's the lottery.
Yeah, you can control your genes, and you can't control your circumstances either. Right? I mean,
at the beginning you can't, but then you can, and you did. Yeah, This is the point, right?
Yeah. Listen, man, that's fascinating. So, like, let's say, for example, let's go like poverty. If somebody grew up in poverty and somebody grew up wealthy, and I would say, like, and this is just my observation from being in 2 sides of a lot of things in my life. It's like I didn't have any money growing up. I also lived in Bombay Beach. And I had to learn how to work hard because everybody around me had to kind of work hard, or they didn't, but it was really easy to pick out the ones who were just complacent and being fine. I've made money in my life.
And you didn't admire them, did you?
I didn't at all, but I can respect them and be friendly with them, whatever. But it's like, I'm not following you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I got my own thing I'm trying to do over here. I ain't trying to be stuck in a 4x4 block town in the middle of the desert doing nothing, right? And then you have people who have money. I haven't grew up around many kids who have money and like kind of seen them with their bad habits or whatever you call it. But the only thing I can go off of is media, right? Like, it's easy to point at the Kardashians and people like that. So do you think there's a difference in like our happiness and expectations based on, let's say, growing up in poverty versus growing up wealthy? Yeah,
well, this really relates to this question people always ask: does money buy happiness?
Yeah.
That's really the question, right? And the answer is, of course, not. But money does eliminate the sources of unhappiness.
Say that one more time.
So money doesn't buy happiness, but it can eliminate many sources of unhappiness.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
That's the important distinction, right? So your grandma would have said, I'm sure she did tell you, money doesn't buy happiness. But what that grandma often left out is, up to a pretty low level, it will eliminate a lot of unhappiness because there's a lot of stuff that you're worried about that's incredibly stressful and there's a ton of stuff on this. There's a guy who teaches with me at Harvard named Raj Shetty, and he does all this work on the stress that comes from actually living in poverty. And he compares it to cognitively, how it impairs your ability to think clearly. Really being in poverty is like staying up all night.
Yeah.
It's like always being on 0 hours of sleep. It's not a cumulative 0 hours of sleep, but how you feel from 7 o'clock until noon on that day you couldn't sleep at all the night before. He says that's kind of how it is. And that's a big problem. You want to eliminate that as much as you possibly can. That's why the research shows that, up to $75,000 a year, you're eliminating sources of unhappiness. And that's a big deal for your quality of life, that you're not worried about getting, evicted. You're not worried about, your kids not being safe so you can live in a neighborhood where there's not a whole lot of crime. You're not worried about being a victim of crime yourself as much when you get above that level. And that's why low levels. And, that's, by the way, that's one of the reasons we talk in public policy about trying to eliminate sources of unhappiness with, welfare services and all that kind of stuff. It's not about happiness. Welfare will never bring happiness, but done right, it can lower sources of unhappiness and set you free to do things in your life.
That's, man, I got emotional when you said staying up all night. Cause the past few years, I've been really appreciative of my parents. I've been really appreciative of my parents because I think I'm realizing how much they sacrifice without really knowing how much they sacrifice and the things that they put themselves through. And I'm raising 3 daughters now, and I'm doing it with I'm doing well, and I just think about what my parents did unknowingly makes me more sad that they did it, that they didn't know what was going on.
Because you were really up against it, right?
Yeah. And the thing is, they didn't know it. So now I speak to my mom now and I speak to my dad. They're very much still in the same mindset because they're conditioned to think in the survival mentality that will not leave them. And I think there's no change in that. You know what I mean? So when I go back and I visit my dad and I speak with him, he still kind of speaks the same and it works for him. You know what I mean? With my mom, it works for her to think the same. And they're, unhappy in a lot of ways.
They're probably hyper vigilant, right? That's what you always see. Hyper vigilance, there's always a threat.
Yeah, there's always a threat, and there's always a sense of complacency because this is just what it is.
Yeah, no, those are real barriers.
Yeah,
for sure, those are real barriers, and it's a blessing not to be dealing with those things. And this is clearly, through your pursuit of excellence, trying really hard, having a lot of natural ability, but also just working your tail off all those years, you got beyond that level where the sources of unhappiness had been eliminated such that today you can give people advice on how to live happier lives. But you got to get above the water level is kind of what it comes down to.
So to get above water level, when you think about, do you think it's important for people to go back and identify those 5 cards? Everybody should go back and identify those things and figure out what they are.
You should be very, very clear and very honest with yourself about what the circumstances actually are. And we should be honest with ourselves about the extent to which we were, played a card that wasn't great or maybe a really, really good card and we haven't exploited it appropriately. We haven't been responsible enough about the blessings that we've been given. Now, here's the danger. Not everybody's got 5 good cards and all of us have at least one that's not great.
Yeah.
Let's not identify with the bad card. Our identity shouldn't be the bad card.
Do you feel like that's the default thing that people do?
People do a lot because our society tells us to do that. It's oh no, look, you had trauma. You had trauma, so that's really going to define you. And any problem that you have as an adult is because of the trauma that you suffered because of that bad card or those bad cards. And that really sets people back a lot. That's a real problem. I get it that those things are real, but the whole idea of identifying your identity actually being the hardship, that becomes very, very problematic in people's lives. And there's a ton of data on that, a ton of science that shows that if you're focusing on the things that have gone wrong, then you're distracted from the things that can go right.
How does somebody focus on the things that are going right over the things that are going wrong?
Well, the truth is that when you're actually trying to be excellent, when you're trying to move in the right direction, there's a lot of blessings out there. But here's the problem. Our brains don't want us to focus on what's going right. Our brains only want us to focus on what's going wrong. In the ancestral environment, not that long ago, 250,000 years ago, in the Pleistocene, we were on the savannah, hunting for food. Your brain paid a lot more attention to bad things than good things. And the reason was because a good thing, I found a gazelle around the watering hole. Hooray, I'm going to eat this week. Is a lot lower stakes than I didn't hear something sneaking up behind me. because that's the end of my life forever. So the result is that the human brain for Homo sapiens has been developed to literally have more brain space devoted to negative emotions than to positive emotions. We are better at resentment than we are at gratitude. We are better at fear than we are at delight. We're better at being suspicious than we are at being trusting. We're physically better at doing those things. That's called the negativity bias. And so the result is if you're not being very conscious about your life, you'll be spending all your time angry and fearful and resentful and skeptical and cynical. And you'll be spending all your time basically in your ancestral environment as if something's trying to sneak up behind you all the time. And I know there's tough times for a lot of people, but we're not on the Pleistocene.
Yeah.
I mean, we there's a lot that people can actually do, and focusing on opportunity as opposed to threat, it takes effort. But when you're focusing on opportunity as opposed to threat, kind of no matter where you start at this point, your life's going to be a lot better.
I mean, I would say through my experience, I think once you focus on opportunity, I think you understand what threats are really worth being threatened.
Tell me more about that. What do you mean?
So like, let's say, for example, like how I grew up, and like, let me use football, for example. Let's say I know that I have to go against this opponent. There's 11 guys over there that I have to worry for, but as a safety, I have to just worry about the tight end and the receiver. So now all the other threats of the guard, the tackle, the quarterback, the running back are kind of like shrunken down, and these are my only two threats now. So now I know that my job on the team in this position is to focus on those things. Now, when I speak about it in real life, it's like, okay, I live in Minneapolis. I'm walking around Minneapolis with my kids as if I'm living in Compton, California. I don't live in Compton no more. So now my threats and the opportunity, like now I just like I'm able to funnel down what is actually threatening me versus what was threatening me before where I was living. Right. So I would say even just focusing on opportunity helps you understand what it is that you need to be worried about.
Yeah, no, that's right. So we do have a tendency to focus on threats that were real at one point in our lives, but aren't today. The threats change. They really do. And thank God, through the series of circumstances and hard work and personal responsibility in your life, you've been able to narrow the range of threats. But in your weakest moments, you're still going to kind of sprawl back out to that. Yeah. That's a really, really normal thing. And especially, by the way, when you've got kids, because that actually stimulates your brain into the protector. And the protector is always looking for making sure that a cheetah is not going to come and pick off your offspring, whatever that happens to be. That's literally how that's the ancestral environment. But that takes metacognition. And simply that means paying attention to what your brain is doing and making the right decisions as opposed to the decisions that naturally come. We can do that. We're higher order beings, man. I mean, it's like so amazing that when we understand that we can make decisions not just about what we want to do, but what we want to perceive and what we want to think. That's power.
Yeah, man. What you're saying is so true, because I just think about the things that are told to us as kids. Well, I'll speak for myself, that was told to me as a kid that I believe to be true, only to grow up to realize it's not really true. It's just like what I was conditioned to believe because I had to be at school or walk down the street in a certain way. But in other places, it's not really like that. But what you're saying is 100%.
Yeah, true. And your daughters are going to grow up in an entirely different way. So they're not going to have the same fears that you do. Yeah. They're not going to have the same sense of threat that you do. And thank God, right? I mean, that's a real advantage because life's got problems in it. It's why be burdened by problems that are no longer relevant just because of, how we were raised. And so you get beyond that, and your children have much greater advantages. Most likely they were born above the water level. And that means they can really focus on becoming happier and bringing more happiness to other people.
So what would you say for somebody who was not born above the water level, work themselves up to get above the water level? They have children. Now their children are going to deal with new problems that they never faced. Right. What does that person do to get educated to make sure they understand what their children are going to be facing? Yeah.
So it's a really interesting thing, because virtually all of us are in a situation where our kids don't face the economic circumstances that we did. Yeah. I mean, it was very different. I mean, I didn't grow up in the circumstances that you did at all, but lower middle class, working class environment on the north side of Queen Anne in Seattle, where I grew up. And most of the families around me, didn't have both parents at home. Very, very few people, a lot of my neighbors were on public assistance. And so there was, we saw people that were struggling a little bit. And when you say, how close were you to knowing somebody in poverty? It's like half the kids in my class. Yeah. Right. My kids, when they went on service projects. The truth is they don't see anything like it is the way that this actually works. And so the result is I have to talk to them a little bit about the way the real world works. And it's very easy.
Well, my daughters are 7, 5, and 2, so I'm not there yet, but I'm like preparing for it.
And you could school me on how the real world works, quite frankly, and then somebody from India could school you on how the real world works.
Because their real world is different, right?
And there's always somebody who's struggling more. There's always somebody who's struggling more. But here's the point. I don't want my kids to grow up. My kids are growing up now. I have grandkids. And my grandkids are, they're never going to see anything. They're so far away from these, these worlds. And my wife grew up in poverty in Barcelona. And so, I mean, way more than me. And, it was hard at times, broken home. And so I want my kids to not feel privileged and not to be entitled. Yeah. Because entitlement's a big moral issue. Yeah. Right. That we have. It's like, of course I fly first class. Right. Are you kidding me? It's like, you're lucky to be on an airplane. You said your first flight ever was when you came to college in Minnesota. Yeah.
First one, I was scared as heck to get on that plane.
So the way to deal with that is not to, make your kids go on more service projects. That's fine, but that's artificial. Right? Yeah. The way to do that is to teach your kids good values. And the way you teach your kids good values has everything to do with the fact that we're all sisters and brothers with equal dignity and no exceptions. That's the really important thing, because what hurts kids a lot who are born with greater levels of privilege, which, by the way, is all Americans compared to the rest of the world, and all modern humans compared to before, whatever, is to make sure that people understand that there's an inherent equal dignity between all people, and we have an opportunity and responsibility to treat everybody as sisters and brothers. You don't treat the President of the United States better than you treat the waiter. That's the best way to actually teach that, because people are in different circumstances, but you can learn something from a poor person, you can learn something from a rich person. You can learn something from everybody, and somebody's got moral standing that you need and that you can actually learn from in every single walk of life. And that's the right thing to teach your kids.
No, 100%. This is where I like this idea of the 5 cards being dealt, because I think it helps you understand also that we're all on the same playing field to some degree. And as we grow up, and let's say we don't know what our cards are exactly, you still can respect that we're all on the same playing field. We're all God's children. Everybody's supposed to be loved and respected. And at the bare minimum, try to be understood. You know what I mean? When I first came to Minnesota, trying to understand people was really difficult, because I come from a place where I look different, I talk different, I walk different. And when I come out here, I never felt like I was being judged. But I knew that the way that I was different. But I was respected by people. When I met my girlfriend, who's my wife, when I went to her house, they respected me for who I was. And that gave me opportunity to understand their culture and the way that they are and the way that they handle things and whatever. So what you're saying is 100% true. And that's why like the 5 cards being dealt is such a valuable thing to me, because it helps me understand that we're on the same playing field. And that helps me to live my life that way. And I can teach my kids that way.
What was it that led your girlfriend, now wife's family, to treat you with that respect? What was it about you that actually, because maybe they were saints, maybe they were just such wonderful people that they treated everybody with inherent respect, but I bet there was something that you did that earned their respect. What was it?
Well, I think there was mystery to me when I first came around. And I think also I was very, I have a big, social platform now, but I was very quiet. And I almost feel like they took me in almost as like not a child, because I'm dating their daughter, but they kind of took me in as like this is my daughter's boyfriend and we're going to just learn and see about him. So that was the first part. But over time, when I started to speak, they saw, I don't know if this is a problem or not, but they saw like opportunity in like what I could be to some degree. They saw that I was kind of incapable or illiterate to express how I'm feeling, but I had a good heart. And I was a good kid. And I played with her little brother. And so I think they just accepted me for who I was from the very basic showing myself to them. And then from there, I earned their respect because I treated their daughter well. I loved her little brother. When I came around, I was respectful. And that was it.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because, now my kids are a little younger than you, but 2 of my kids are my 26-year-old and 24-year-old sons. They're both married and they both have children at this point. So nice and young the way they're doing it. And when you when their potential mate comes around, I mean, it's like audition time, right? And what are you looking for? I can tell you what parents are looking for. They're looking for somebody who is impeccable in character, right? And who has a good future. That's what you're really looking for, is somebody who's like, there's a bright future for this person.
How are you able to identify that?
You have a sixth sense, because, our brains are we're picking up all kinds of information way below our level of consciousness. And parent, you're going to see this when your little girls grow up, and they're going to bring boys home, and you're going to be like, it's like, no. You're gonna
That might be everybody though.
It's like, it's funny, it's funny because, it's like this one, yes, this one, no. Most of these no's, right? Because, guys, right? But the whole point is that when you see somebody who has got a great future and who has fundamentally good values, and because it's like, that can be the parent to my grandchild. That's kind of how you're perceiving this whole thing. But you're looking at the whole, the whole system in front of you, and they saw something that, who knows, this might, it turns out that you are the father of their grandchildren. They didn't know it at that time, but they were looking for somebody who's going to treat her right, somebody who has a good future, somebody who's going to raise good kids, and they actually can see that. And a lot of it has to do with the two things, which is a professional future, being able to grow up. There's something good about you that you're going to turn into a better version of what you are, and you have impeccable character. That's really, really what they want. And how do they find your character? You played with a little brother. You were probably really polite with them.
True.
You were probably a nice person. You were kind with them. You're obviously highly intelligent. And just the fact that you hadn't gone to college yet doesn't matter. You can see that in 10 seconds. They're like, I don't know this Cedric character, but I kind of like him. I'm not sure why.
Well, I guess, yeah. I mean, you just helped me. I never really understood. I was like, man, I didn't talk when I came around. I don't know what y'all saw in me, because I didn't say anything. I was quiet. And to a large degree, I thought it was disrespectful because I didn't talk. But it was like, I don't know what to say around y'all. I'm pretty quiet. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna compliment
you. You made a good impression. You clearly made a good impression, and that's important. That's a really important thing.
It's important for me to recognize too, because I think impression all comes from, for me, impression comes from performance.
Yeah.
I lived a performance-based life all my life. And I thought that I had to put in the work and show you for you to compliment me or like me. But you're making me realize that, people have this sixth sense where they can see character, and you can essentially see you in their lives.
Yeah. Right? And this is an important thing. Also, you're making a distinction now that's really important for your future happiness, because you're only 32 years old. And so I'll tell this, like, I'm your dad. I could be your dad.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
I'm 28 years older than you are.
Okay.
So for high performers, you've always you're probably a talented athlete and a good student. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Yeah. Going through. So this is, and that's terrific. But the result of that is, as a kid, a lot of your rewards, your cognitive rewards, the parts of your brain that got tapped in the reward center of your brain, which, if you want to know, it's called the ventral tegmental area of your limbic system, and the ventral striate, and these little things you tap and you're like, oh, it feels good. Now, and maybe it's because somebody says, I love you, or somebody says A+ in the report card, or, people will do it by taking a bump of cocaine. I mean, it's the same part of the brain that actually does this, right? You got reward after reward after reward because adults said, it's amazing. It's amazing. You're fast.
Yeah.
You're a good athlete. That's another A on the report card. You got into a good university. You just got drafted by the Miami Dolphins. You just got another 1 million followers on social media. Those are the rewards, because your brain is really, really good at doing that. But here's the danger side. As you get older, you're going to find that
they fade away quick.
No, it's not exactly, but you're going to chase that. You're going to chase that more. Why? Because it's easy to fall into the pattern that my wife won't love me unless I'm enough. that my parents and my friends won't admire me unless I'm enough. I need to be enough. And so the result of that is like, honey, I know you want me to be home more, but I got to go to work. And she says, we have enough money, Sid. And you're like, I can't tell you why, but here's the reason. If I don't do more, you're going to stop loving me. And that's a pattern ingrained from childhood. Here's the point. You are enough. You are lovable. You don't have to earn it through these outside things. It's good that you do. It's good that you're excellent, but don't fall into the pathology of letting your talent subjugate you. That's called success addiction. And self-objectification. And that's the future for a lot of really excellent kids who turn into excellent adults. They're still an excellent little boy getting a pat on the head for the rest of their lives. Look, I know wherefore I speak. That's me too. That's me too.
Yeah. I mean, you're speaking to my heart right now.
Of course.
It's the thing that like I really struggled and struggle with till this day with my marriage. I didn't realize how much of how I grew up being rewarded from coaches, teachers, my parents, how much I was looking from that from my wife by doing things that wasn't even asked of me. We move in together finally, and I'll do all the dishes, or I'll fold all the clothes, or I'll do all the things. Nobody's saying nothing to me. So this weird unknowing resentment's coming up because I'm not being even congratulated for it. But then on top of it, I'm getting beat down for it not even being right in the first place because her way is different, how I'm supposed to fold the clothes or do the dishes or whatever. So what you're speaking directly to like the core of something that I'm trying to figure out how to, turn the dial down because it is who I am. Yeah. But I got to turn the dial down because that's not the place to have it up. No,
you're very, very all excellent people, and I admire the excellence. I mean, I admire that so much. I specialize in strivers. The group I write for is strivers. I'm writing my books literally for you. What strivers have is so beautiful in the world. And the truth is, if it weren't for strivers, if it weren't for the entrepreneurs, if it weren't for the hard workers, if it weren't for the people in pursuit of excellence, we'd be living in caves, man. I mean, it's like if it were people who just kind of go along and get along, you think we would have progressed beyond ancient times? Of course not. But there's a liability to being a striver. And that's what we call extrinsic rewards motivation. Extrinsic versus intrinsic. Extrinsic rewards are money, power, pleasure, admiration of other people, the compliments that we get from the outside world being number one. Those are extrinsic rewards. Those rely on the outside world saying, congratulations, Sid, you did it again. Intrinsic rewards are what you get from the warmth of a loving relationship. Those are what come from inside you. Those are the rewards that are produced by your own heart. And that requires a whole lot of trust. And what happens is if you're a super striver from when you're a kid, you don't trust.
So are you saying relationship with yourself or relationship with others when it comes
others
to that?
It starts with yourself, but ultimately what it is you're seeking that in the relationship with other people, but not because they tell you you're number one, but because they love you for who you are. That's the interesting thing, right? And so what you'll find is a lot of strivers surround themselves with not real friends, but deal friends. Yeah. And what the deal friends do is they want to be around the striver because they want the reflected excellence and brilliance of the striver. So famous people will hang around with sycophants and hangers-on, and that's the kind of friends that they want because they're like, oh, Sid, you're such a big shot. You're so awesome. And what was it like playing for the Dolphins and all this kind of stuff? That's not satisfying. This won't satisfy what your heart actually needs. Yeah. All it will do is for one more day convince you that you're good enough, that you're lovable enough, that you're enough. And that's the problem. That's the thing. And so the side of excellence that we always talk about, which I truly admire, and so do you, is the hard work and personal responsibility that can get you beyond adverse circumstances and make you do extraordinary things. The dark side is it's harder for you to be happy. Yeah. It's actually harder for you to be happy because you think you have to earn these outside things to get the rewards that are the only thing that make you feel alive. And that's what you got to get beyond. Honey, I just want you to love me. I just want to be lovable. I just want our marriage to be an antenna to God. That's all I want. As opposed to, look at all the good stuff I'm doing. I won again. I brought in a bunch of money and I folded the laundry and I did the dishes. Am I number one yet?
And it's so funny because are we really asking ourselves, are we number one? Or are we asking, do you see me? Or are they the same thing?
It's the same thing. It's ultimately the same thing because when you're not doing something extraordinary, you feel invisible. You don't feel inherently valuable. You don't feel inherent. You have no inherent value if all the value you've ever felt comes from your outside activities and your excellence and the rewards that you get from other people, not for who you are, but what you've done, but for what you've done. And we have to become more accustomed to being lovable for who we are and not what we do. You aren't what you're doing. You're not the podcaster. You're Cedric. Yeah. That's who you are. You're a beloved child of God. And your wife loves you inherently if you have a healthy marriage, which I'm sure you do. Right? And the more that you would lean into that, by the way, the happier she's going to be.
Man, so a couple of weeks ago, me and my wife went to New York. It was the first date that we had in a long time, away from kids. My daughters are 7, 5, and 2, so we can finally start leaving them with grandma.
Right.
And we were in New York and we had a great time. And I was walking down the street. She wanted to go. She was getting a toy for my kids. And I'm walking down the street. And during that trip, me and her name's Charlotte, we were like kind of bickering at each other a lot because I think we were kind of getting used to being by ourselves again. And I'm walking down the street and I'm thinking about why are all these little things kind of just like annoying me that is going on with Charlotte. And this feeling came over me of just like, you just need to see her through the lens of like, she's your wife, you're her husband, you guys love each other, and that's enough. And ever since then, I've had this unwavering amount of, I don't know what to call it, strength. I don't know if I call it resilience. I don't know what it is, but I'm able to see her in a way that this is just my wife. And I love her just how she is. And all the things that come with how much money she makes or what's being done in the house doesn't even matter, because that can take just a conversation and an agreement on how something is going to get done in our home, for example. Right. But how I love her is literally just how I see her, the lens that I get to view her through. And you saying that really makes me be able to separate what I'm chasing versus, I even hesitate to say this, versus like what's given to some degree. Is it given?
Yeah, I know. It's hard to accept.
So I have to accept it.
Very hard to accept. You do. There's no other way. Now think about it this way. Just put the sort of the shoe on the other foot in your marriage. Imagine that Charlotte, that her entire sense of herself, or her physical beauty, like Miss Minnesota, right? Or something like that. And now she's 32 like you, right? And time marches on and people change, right? Not less beautiful, but not the same as when you're 18 and 20 and 22. If her entire self-worth and sense of identity were based on her physical beauty, then she would not trust you to love her as she changed physically. Has her children, gets a little bit older. And what would she do as a result of that? She'd push you away.
Yeah.
She wouldn't trust you and she would push you away, right? And you'd be like, honey, I love you the way that you are. I love you the way that you are. And she would not trust you and she would keep you at arm's length, right? That's what you do. See, that's the thing, right? And guys do this all the time and they don't recognize it, right? They don't know that because they're their own version of the beauty queen. And they don't trust their wives to actually love them. They don't trust their parents and their friends to actually love them for who they are. And so the result is they keep trying to, put on the mask and go do the thing and work themselves to death as a result of it, because they're trying to earn the love of the people whose love they don't even have to earn. On the contrary, the time you're spending earning somebody else's love is pushing them away because you're not actively loving them.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and by the way, it's like guilty, and everybody I work with is the same thing. And there's a lot of people out there who have an outreach, have a mission to people who are really struggling with self-image and struggling with excellence and struggling with motivation. But that's not you. That's not you. And that's not what I'm specializing in, because, and by the way, we all do the work that we need. I don't do research. I do me search. The reason I study happiness for strivers is because I'm a striver and I want to be happy.
Yeah, that's a bar. Me search. I'm got to take that from you. That's really good. Yeah, that's really, really good.
That's what we do. That's what we do.
100%.
That's what we do. Yeah.
I'm thinking about the role that happiness has in marriage. Like when I talked about the 5 cards that we've been dealt, and like we're bringing all that baggage over with somebody, right? And a lot of the times I would say that most of that stuff probably isn't worked on by the time you at least get married. Probably like in the dating phase, no, especially not the dating phase. Like by the time you get married, you're probably not really understanding the cards that you've been dealt, or at least all of them. Let's just say that, for example. But you come into marriage with all this baggage that you're bringing over, and to a lot of degree, I feel that people are looking for somebody to make them happy when they get in a relationship. And I think that this is where this idea of soulmates come in. Like I'm looking for my soulmate. Somebody's going to come in and just make me happy, right? I remember when I first got with Charlotte, we would talk about soulmates. And from the jump, I was like, look, I don't believe in soulmates. Like I just think that like, I like you, you like me, we going to figure this thing out. And I just want to earn that respect, right? I want to earn that respect that I'm with you and I'm for you. And I want to see the same from you. So when you think about that, like why do people from a default go into a relationship thinking that this person is going to make them happy? Or even before that, they're looking for someone to make them happy?
That's a very natural thing. And part of that has to do with the neurochemical process of falling in love. So part of this is just, so human beings are a pair-bonded, pair-mated species. I mean, there's a lot of hypotheses about whether or not, men naturally have more than one mate and all that. But the preponderance of evidence suggests that we're a pair-bonded species, that we pair up with each other and we mate with the same person, et cetera. And when all goes well, it's just one and done. When all goes well, and doesn't all go well for everybody at every point in life. But that's the goal, and that's the reason that most societies throughout history have seen that as the right goal, because that's a natural thing. Okay. To do that, you have to have the ignition for the relationship. So you go back to when you're 18 years old, if you can remember back that far. That's now an ancient history for you, right? But I go back, I met my wife 37, 38 years ago.
Okay.
Right. I've been married almost 34 years. Right.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah.
Man.
It's great. I mean, and trust me, when you get older, it gets better. Right. It gets
Why,
better.
the kids are gone?
Yeah. Might have something to do with that. So, and when you're falling in love, what happens is there's kind of this cascade that happens in your brain, and it makes you nuts. It makes you literally insane. Here's how it starts. It starts off with attraction, because you can't actually have a pair bond without attraction. And attraction is usually a stimulation of sex hormones, testosterone and estrogen. Both males and females need both. Men, a lot more testosterone, women, a lot more estrogen. But that's what makes you attracted to each other in the first place. That's not enough. There are a lot of people who think that's enough, and they, engage in ways that lead to tons of misery, right? I mean, the hookup culture is horrible for happiness. And we pretty much all know that at this point, despite the fact that people are still experimenting with that. It's so dumb.
Yeah, no, it is.
But the second is that you actually start falling in love after attraction, and that actually stimulates two neurotransmitters in the brain: dopamine, which gives you a sense of anticipation, and norepinephrine, which comes from the adrenal glands above your kidneys, and that gives you a sense of euphoria. And so it's like, when's she going to text me? When's she going to text? Who cares? It's a text. But no, anticipation of the big reward, and then the euphoria when the text comes in saying, "I can't wait to see you. I miss you so much." 3-4 little words, crazy.
Nothing else like it.
No. The next step is the really hard step. The next step is when serotonin levels in the brain fall. Now, almost everybody listening to us, they know serotonin is somehow related to depression. And when people don't have enough serotonin in the synapse in their brain, the synapse is the space between two neurons in the brain, how they communicate with each other. And serotonin takes information from one nerve cell to another nerve cell in the brain. And when it's not in there long enough, that's associated with a clinical depression. So you take serotonin drugs like Prozac that we've all heard of, that leaves more serotonin in the synapse between the nerve cells. It increases the amount of serotonin that's available in the brain. Okay. Why do I bring this up? Because when you're falling in love, the third stage is that serotonin tanks in the brain. And so if you look on fMRI at people's brains who are clinically depressed and people who are in love, they look the same. They look the same. It's a clinical depression. Why? Because when you're depressed, you're ruminating, you're thinking again and again and again about sad things and terrible things and all that. What's happening in nature is for you to fall in love, you need to ruminate on the other person. That's how you bond to the other person. You're going through the same process of ruminating. It's like, so do you think she likes me? And she hasn't texted me in like a whole hour. Maybe she's with some other guy and the whole thing. That's because that's how your brain is bonding to hers, and she's doing the same thing. If you're in sync, that's doing the same thing, right? That's misery. That's pure, unadulterated misery, but you have to go through it. That's why you send 100 text messages in an hour like an idiot. It's because your brain isn't working right. And that's the phase that you're in. Finally, you get to these bonding hormones in your brain, vasopressin and oxytocin. There's the chemicals of the love molecules that you bond to the other person, and you adopt that person as your kin. That's where you want to get in the process of falling in love. And doing all that feels magical because you've lost control of your brain, is what's going on. And that's when you start thinking like, this is the only person in the world who could ever love me and I could ever love, and that's soulmates. That's magical thinking, and that's dangerous. That's dangerous thinking because to begin with, it's wrong. It's just an artifact of the natural neurochemical process of falling in love. And that's what we need to understand. And the result of that is it kind of gives us all this warped thinking like, he betrayed me a little bit. He told me a little lie, or he didn't show up when he was supposed to. Maybe he's not my soulmate. Okay, it's off. Because it conflicts with this weird storm, this tornado that's actually happening in our heads that we need so that you and Charlotte can make it to the altar and then spend the rest of your lives together. But you don't want to stay there.
Okay.
You don't want to stay there.
Okay.
What you really want to get to, especially within between 2 and 5 years in your relationship, is best friendship. That's the goal. That's called companionate love. The passionate phase, 1, 2, 3, 4, that I just talked about, that whole complicated, wonky scientific exegesis.
Honeymoon phase, all that stuff.
Yeah,
right?
man, that's not supposed to last. That's the passionate phase so that you're completely bonded to each other. Then what you need, which takes a long time, is to establish the deep friendship that's at the basis of every long-term relationship, and especially your marriage.
Man, I have a couple of questions. So the first one is, like you said, you want to fall in love.
Yeah.
I mean, how long does that take? And when does that ever stop? Like, you've been married 34 years.
It sort of depends on what being in love means.
Yeah,
right?
so let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So what does being in love mean? Or how are you falling in love?
So people define falling in love as having these insane feelings.
Yeah.
That's kind of how they define it.
I mean, that's what my definition was when you said it.
And that's not associated with happiness. People are not happy when they're in love. They're euphoric, right? And they have a huge anticipation of reward. But, falling in love is associated with jealousy and suspicion and surveillance behavior. And those are not things I associate with happiness, typically, right? Now, you want it because it's so exciting, but you don't want that for the rest of your life, because you'd go out of your mind, right? You'd go completely bonkers. You'd be totally unproductive. You'd probably die at a very young age because of chemical imbalances in your brain, your hormone levels. You don't want it. The whole point is you want to get past that. To stay in love is this commitment, is this decision. See, to love is not a feeling. It's to will the good of another person as that person. You want to love your wife. Here's what it means to love your wife. I will her good as her, not as me. I will her good as her. I want that. I'm praying, Lord, bless her as her, not as me. That's real love. And to feel that is to feel that in your bones and to offer that up to each other on a continual basis, not because of your feelings, but in spite of your feelings many days.
Yeah. What you're saying is so good. Because when you think about society today, I think a lot of people are fighting for love. But as soon as they get like these red flags, that's the big term these days, red flags. They do something, the person that they're dating does something that they don't like, they're labeled as a narcissist. It's like, those are the words that are thrown around. When you really think about it, it's like you're going through the process of falling in love. So would you say that falling in love is something that it needs to be earned, right? Or does it need to be earned? And also, is it mostly about kind of getting over yourself?
A lot of it, yeah. No, get through the early stages, get through the early bonding stages, and then do the work to get to companionate love.
So what are the prerequisites to know that this person is worth it to even give?
You'll find out. The point is also don't overindulge on information on the internet, because almost all of it's nonsense. One of the reasons that there are two big reasons that young people struggle so much. I mean, there's more than that. I mean, the truth of the matter is that our culture today is hostile to romantic love. Yeah. We tell men that women are, unreliable, and they just want to use men, and women are told that men are nothing more than predators. And the internet culture is just completely poisonous when it comes to love. And by the way, not just internet culture. I mean, college campuses are make romantic love sound like it's terrible and predatory and bad, and we're doing all kinds of harm to young people. But then the oversharing of inaccurate information on the internet about what red flags actually are. Look, we all have a past. We all have experiences. We've all made mistakes.
Bad habits.
But you're wired to figure out who's supposed to be your mate. You'll make mistakes, to be sure, but that's one of the reasons that people actually, on average, have their hearts truly broken 5 times before they find the person with whom that's going to be their pair bond, because it's just like starting a bunch of businesses that go bankrupt. You learn more each time. That's how you get the experience. That's what it's supposed to be. That's why you should be dating, if you can, when you're 18 and 19 and 20, doing it responsibly, doing it morally according to your religion and according to your upbringing. That's great, but give your heart away, man, and get it stomped on, and it's okay. And by the time you're 22 and 23 and 24 and you meet the person and you've both had experiences, and you don't need to go on some website and watch a billion YouTube videos about what the red flags about women are, all you're going to get is the wrong impression of women. Is all you're going to get. The second big problem is dating apps. And that's how 62% of couples form now, is on the apps. Not because they're better, but because they've crowded everything else out. It's like, back in my day, VHS tapes crowded out Beta and Betamax, and Betamax was a better technology, but VHS had a better market position. That's what's going on with dating apps, is that they've crowded out relationships that are formed because of mutual friends, because of family, because of school, because of work. 62% of people meet on this really suboptimal platform where you curate the people you want to meet on the basis of looking in the mirror. It's like, what do I want? I want, it's like, so if I were, God forbid, if I were, 25 years old and, looking for somebody to marry, and I would say, okay, I want somebody who's just like Arthur Brooks. I want somebody who's a, Seahawks fan. And, I want somebody who, really likes this kind of music and,
Are you a Seahawks fan?
Of course. I grew up in Seattle.
My brother got drafted to the Seahawks.
Are you kidding?
I'm not.
Did he play?
He did. 3-4 years.
What's your brother? Who's your brother?
Tedrick Thompson. He's a safety. Sorry.
That's great. That's great. And let's see, who else came out of your hometown? Sherman came out of Compton.
Yeah, he's from Compton.
He's from Compton. Marshawn Lynch is from LA too, right?
He's from the Bay. But
he's from the Bay Area.
He's from the Bay.
Yeah. Those are actually ex-Seahawks, by the way.
Yeah, my brother too.
Greatest team in the NFL, and I can't change my heart. That's what it comes down to. But the whole point is, if I'm dating, I'm going to be curating the thing to look like me. And guess what? That's like dating your sibling, which is not hot. There's a reason that attraction is lower when people are meeting on apps. There's more dates and less attraction because you need Charlotte to be different than said. That's really important. You need to have a baseline of values, a baseline of compatibility, but that's very minimal. On top of that, you need complementarity, somebody who completes you, not somebody who's the same as you. And that's the second big reason that it's getting so much harder today. So what I recommend to everybody is basically, it's like, don't get your dating advice from the internet. All you'll get is fake news, man. Number two, ask your friends and family, the people that you trust who share your values, to help you find the right person, to help you find who your soulmate is going to be. And it's not a soulmate is born, your soulmate is made in the relationship that you get. And then number three, have the right expectations. You're going to be bonkers for the first couple of months. You're going to be out of your mind with insanity. But the ultimate goal is to spend the rest of your life walking toward heaven with your best friend.
Yeah, and I think walking the rest of your life, I always say that, like, somebody who's willing to ride with you, because like it's a bumpy road. Like the experience that I had that I'm interested for you to, like, I guess, diagnose to some degree, is that when I was with my wife, it was all about like, we're together. This is who I'm rocking with. I love her for everything that she is, but I'm not really paying attention to entirely what's going on because I'm playing football. I like this girl. She seemed to like have my back with all the things that I can't really take care of. And I think for me, that was my like completes me kind of.
And you were a young guy too.
Yeah.
You're an immature man.
Yeah. And then as I got older and I started to understand my emotions and identify my feelings and process and articulate how I was feeling, I started to ask myself, like, man, did I make the right decision based on what people are saying online? I started playing, like, my wife is half Caucasian, half Filipino. So the whole like race thing came in. It's like, oh man, was I supposed to like marry a black woman because like somebody said this? Oh, like I grew up washing the dishes and she didn't. She didn't have her dad. I had both of my parents. Did I have like kind of went through like a survey to make sure that all these boxes were checked off? And it took me some time to, get in the fire, be in love, and kind of wrestle through that to realize like none of that stuff even matters.
It's not relevant.
At all. And it's not relevant at all.
On the contrary, the more you spend time on that, the less you're going to be spending on time on things that really are relevant.
Yeah, and this is where the New York trip came in for me. Because like, again, I'm trying to identify what it is that's really wrong instead of like loving her and choosing to see her through the lens. This is my wife. She chose me. I chose her. All the other stuff we can work on later.
And you were actually sort of chosen for each other. This is the thing. This is the thing. So she's religious too, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the thing that religious people ultimately believe and this is one of the things that we've done since our kids were born. We've been praying for our kids' spouses since they were babies. Like, and it's funny because then they appear, right? And you feel that this is in God's hands. If you're a religious person, you'll feel that this is in God's hands, that this is, It's meant to be, but not in some, magical Disney way, but because God wants us to be together. God doesn't want us to be happy with each other every single day. God doesn't want to have these beautiful Disney feelings every single day. God wants us to struggle because we're supposed to struggle. And even if you're not religious, anybody who's watching us who's not religious saying, oh, get rid of the religious stuff, fine. You still need to struggle because you won't learn and grow unless you struggle in your marriage.
And you always say that the key to happiness is unhappiness.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have to go through struggle.
Totally, because you don't learn and grow.
Yeah.
You don't learn and grow. If you didn't have unhappiness, you'd never arrive at happiness.
Yeah. And I think you can even take examples of working out. Like in order to get stronger, to get faster, you have to go through pain and struggle to get those things.
And you got to learn to love the pain.
Yeah.
And you need to learn. This is the key thing that I tell young guys who want to have a happy marriage and want to have an enduring marriage that will last the rest of their lives. You need to learn to love the trouble. You need to learn. I think you have
to describe what trouble means. Though,
trouble means all sorts of different things. It means arguments. It means disagreements. It means the
being
times.
Wrong.
Yeah. It means the apologies that you have to make. Yeah. It means it means forgiveness. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. All the really unpleasant things that you have to learn to love those things is what it comes down to. And much the same way. And the gym is the right way to think about this. You learned early on that leg day sucks.
Yeah, from the jump, from the beginning.
Women love leg day, by the way.
Yeah, my wife loves doing.
They love leg day because they have super strong legs, right?
Yeah.
We hate leg day. Guys hate leg day, right? Always. But you learn to love what you hate. So, and you learn to love what you hate because the benefit is so great of leaning into that thing that's actually hard, facing it as a man, facing it as a courageous person that is so unbelievably rewarding. Well, that's the same thing. And people are running away from discomfort in other parts of their lives. And that's a huge mistake. It's a huge mistake. If you run away from the discomfort in your marriage, if you run away from the growth that you're supposed to get as a father, then you'll actually never grow and you'll never get the reward.
How does somebody learn to be comfortable in pain? I mean, it's easy for me to say that. I can easily say what my answer is because mine is all grit because of how I grew up in football. That's basically my magic formula. Right. But somebody who, let's say, didn't grow up in poverty, had to get it from the dirt, and they didn't play a sport.
Right.
Like, what do they do?
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people who, everybody, by the way, everybody has to learn grit. And not in exactly the same way. But life is tough. I mean, that's the first noble truth of Buddhism is that life is suffering. That's literally, Buddhism is based on this one truth that life is dissatisfaction and suffering and cravings and insufficiencies and resentments. And once again, that's because the negative emotions that we have are part of helping us to understand what threats are out there. And you're not going to get rid of threats. And you need negative emotions to alert you to things. And you're never going to get rid of bad experiences because that's what it means to be alive. The only way to get rid of bad experiences is to die, is literally to die. Okay, I'll take life with some bad experiences in it. So the way that you accommodate yourself to it, because it's a terrible life strategy to try to avoid the bad.
Yeah,
it's an awful way to live because what you'll be doing is you'll be avoiding life itself, and you'll never find greater happiness.
I mean, to me, that's where addiction comes in.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like growing
that's
up,
just numbing.
Yeah. I have a lot of cousins.
Elimination.
Yeah, I have a bunch of cousins and family who are just addicted to drugs, you know, because it's kind of like a standard from where we're from because they want to numb the pain.
Right.
You know, they don't want to deal with the reality. And I never understood people, and this is no disrespect to anybody who's addicted to drugs. I know how difficult it is.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know from experience, but from witnessing with my family and friends. But I never understood it because when you see the deterioration of the body, I'm like, why would you want to do that? But when I recognize they're trying to numb something and the actual feeling of what the drug does, dopamine and all these things in the brain, they don't really care about the actual sacrifice of their bodies, their teeth, their weight, the seizures, the overdosing. Like the whole thing with, what's that drug that's everywhere? Like fentanyl. And the rates of people dying is just
100,000 people a year.
Yeah, it's insane.
It's crazy.
But people are willing to do that to numb the pain.
Yeah.
So I think it goes back to what you're saying about being comfortable with really being uncomfortable and knowing that it's okay. Right. And I think the biggest thing is it's normal.
Yeah. Right? It's not only normal, it's unbelievably beneficial. And so one of the things that people often make these gratitude lists, and that's great. I believe that we should make gratitude lists that focus on the things that we're grateful for. But I make resentment lists and failure lists and disappointment lists and sadness lists. Why? Because I want to be able to write down these things and say, it's not going to kill me. Not going to kill. Oh, by the way, at some point it's going to kill me. It's okay too. Right?
Yeah.
But I want to be able to write that thing down. And here's the master stroke. To start your day saying, I'm truly grateful for all the beautiful things that are going to happen this day. And I'm also grateful for the things I'm going to hate. I'm grateful for it because that's evidence that I'm alive. It's evidence of it. And I can handle it, and I'm going to get through it, and I'm going to light my head back down on the pillow when I get at the end of this day, and I'm still going to be alive. You know, look, anybody can get through a life with no difficulty. I mean, could, theoretically. Nobody actually has that life. So why would you actually try to do something that's truly undistinguished? On the contrary, bring it on, man. And this is one of the things I teach my students, because I teach this big happiness, this science of happiness class. I make them say, my sadness, my suffering are sacred. Bring it on.
Yeah, like you're willing to earn it and fight for it, because that's what happiness really takes. And speaking of that, like, so I think one thing that's really difficult for people to understand is that understanding the endlessness of the pursuit of happiness, right? Like it's never ending. It's this, I call it harmony. Like we're always looking for harmony in our lives, to have like this state in your mind where everything is cool. To do that takes work. It takes understanding all the different elements and stuff to get that harmony, which is, I think, in turn brings happiness. How do you frame the idea of making happiness attractive beyond what it is at its default for what people think it's something that you just feel?
Well, it's not a feeling to begin with. You know, the idea of defining happiness as a feeling is hugely problematic, because you're just going to be looking for pleasant feelings all the time. And we've already talked about why that's a bad strategy. It's impossible, but it's stupid also. You got to define it in the right way, and then it becomes attractive. Happiness is a combination of enjoying your life, taking satisfaction with your accomplishments, and understanding the meaning of your existence. Enjoyment plus satisfaction plus meaning. Those are three unbelievably interesting, challenging goals. And that's just really worth pursuing. Enjoyment is not pleasure. Not the same thing. Pleasure is an animal goal. Enjoyment is one that's a really human goal, where you're managing your pleasures and you can remember them. That's what enjoyment really is all about. Satisfaction is the joy that comes from accomplishing something hard with effort and even with suffering. That's how the suffering is embedded in it. And last, most importantly, is meaning. I'm writing a book. I just finished a book on meaning. It's coming out next year, called The Meaning of Your Life, How to Find Deep Purpose in an Age of Emptiness, right? Because that's the main problem that people have, is they don't understand the meaning of their life. And it's getting harder and harder and harder, because, you know, most people are not anesthetizing themselves with fentanyl. Most people are anesthetizing themselves by looking at the phone
it's
all
the
day
access
long.
to excess that we have.
It's a huge problem. They're changing their brains under the circumstances. But when they understand what meaning actually is, which is why things happen the way they do, what's my purpose, what are my goals and directions, so I can make progress in this pilgrimage that's my life, and what's the significance of it? Why does my life matter, and to whom? Those are super interesting questions. Those are exciting questions, like being Lewis and Clark looking for the Pacific Ocean over the course of your life. And that's why it becomes really attractive, because you see your happiness not as something you wish you had, but something that you can actually gain and earn and understand and share, and you can become great at it. And that's really worth dealing with in your life. That's worth getting better at.
Yeah, no. 100%. Like you said, like, I mean, you're the pro at this. You know what I mean? Like, I've learned so much from you, and even just the understanding the difference between enjoyment, satisfaction, and purpose, and knowing that there's kind of levels to it, and you have to respect each level before you can get happiness. And I think that you can look at happiness as something that's worth fighting for, because everybody wants to be happy. But are you willing to do what it takes to be happy?
And well, it takes sacrifices, and it means accepting a lot of unhappiness. It also means understanding that perfect happiness is not possible, nor desirable. You know, perfect happiness would mean you don't have any negative emotions and you don't have any negative experiences. Well, that means that literally means you're dead. That literally means you're dead, and I'm not ready to be dead yet.
Yeah, me neither.
So the goal is, you know, I wrote this book last year with Oprah Winfrey, and we were scoping the whole book out, and she'd read all the stuff, and she was talking about it, and she says, so you keep talking about unhappiness and that perfect happiness is not possible. She says, so the goal is happiness. And I said, that's like, my whole career in 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
I listened to the podcast with you and Simon Sinek, and you talked about how she's kind of like in the mix, and you study it, and how you guys came together. It was perfect, because she was like living it while you were studying it, and like that book kind of just fused together. It's a beautiful book. Like, it really, really is.
I owe her a lot. I owe her a lot because she was super helpful for putting a bunch of the ideas together in one place for me and really hosting that whole project. And also it's become a very beautiful friendship.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So if people wanted to get happiness themselves, right? Where would you tell them to start with what you do? Like you have the books, you've been on podcasts, like where you tell them to go to start?
Yeah.
So I think about the people who just feel like happiness is not attainable because of the cards that they've been dealt, the person that hurt them, them focusing on the one bad card instead of the other four good ones. Where would they start with your
defining their own identity with respect to the bad card? Brutal. So that's why Oprah and I wrote that book called Build the Life You Want. Build the Life You Want. It's a primer on how to attain happiness no matter where you start. And it actually starts with the story of somebody I loved a lot, my mother-in-law, who was dealt a really bad hand. I mean, a really bad hand in life. And how she built her own life, notwithstanding the bad 5 cards. I mean, I think probably all 5 were rotten in her life, and people learn that story. But how she transcended that through hard work and her personal merit and responsibility and taking control of the things that she could take control of, as opposed to focusing on the things that she actually couldn't. And then it talks about how the basic science is attainable by everybody. I mean, you don't have to go suffer through a PhD like I did to get this. On the contrary, the science is pretty straightforward. That's the first step. And that's why we wrote that book. That's a good place to start. The second part is actually making a commitment to change things about your own life. Not enough to have this knowledge. You need the knowledge, right? Just like you got to know something about football before you're going to play football. That's the reason that apparently every kid who shows up at, Pop Warner has been playing Madden, right? Because that's where everybody actually learns about football. And it's amazing how, the penetration that's had, because that's like college level knowledge, not playing, but knowledge about actually how it works. It wires kids' brains to be football machines in a lot of ways, really. So the knowledge is super important, but then you got to actually play. You actually have to get out there on the field and actually play. And that means for happiness, you got to change a bunch of your habits. You have to change a bunch of commitments that you've made, ways that you see yourself, the way that you treat other people, the commitments that you make toward loving other people with respect to what are you going to do to expand your spiritual knowledge? What are you going to do with the relationships around you, with your family? How are you going to make friendships that endure and last and are healthy? How are you going to get into relationships that are not unhealthy? Right? What does that actually mean? You have to make commitments to do things that are not easy, but will benefit you in the long run. You got to change your life. And last but not least, here's the most important step. You got to share it. You got to become a happiness teacher. You want to become a happier person? Everybody listening to us has to become a happiness professor. Now, that doesn't mean they have to go teach my class.
Or do it online, right?
It means finding a way to take the ideas that are based in truth and sharing them with others. Maybe you're a happiness teacher with your children. Maybe with your parents, maybe with your friends, maybe at school, maybe at work, but making a commitment to sharing the ideas is how you cement it into your own mind. There's a ton of neuroscience research that shows that your brain changes when you teach something. This is one of the reasons that people become much better athletes when they start doing some coaching earlier in their careers. It's like, right? So that's the key. Learning, changing, teaching. Those are the 3 parts. How anybody can actually get happier. It takes work, but it's joyful work, man.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, you get to choose your heart. And I would say choosing to be happy is definitely worth it.
It's definitely the choice I strongly recommend.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
All right, Dr. Brooks, thank you so much, man. This was something that I've looked forward to for a long time.
Me too.
And thank
you.
Me
too. I found this very rewarding. Congratulations on your success.
Thank you.
Less the success you've earned and more the success that you're going to have.
Thank you.
As reflected in the goodness you're going to bring to people around you. You're a happiness teacher, and I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much, man. That means a lot to me. All right, Dr. Brooks, you're the best, man.
Thanks.
Everything works out the way it's supposed to. The way it's supposed to. The way it's supposed to. Everything works out.